We go through all the linebackers for the Chicago Bears next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching out there on YouTube, or if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, just make sure to give us 5 stars. You can always download the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Unbearable Sports. So, welcome back in. We are continuing to raise money for the American Diabetes Association. So links in the description if you want to buy a shirt or just donate directly out there. And by just simply watching this show, it helps as well because I'll be donating some of the money that we make with this show over to the American Diabetes Association. But let's get going into the final defensive position profile episode that we have out here. So we have been breaking down the corners, the safeties, the defensive ends, defensive tackles, and now we're finally to the linebackers. The best position for the Chicago Bears as a whole over history. We love our linebackers. Urlacher, Briggs, everybody. We love this position. So what we're going through today, we're going to be breaking down some of the key losses that we have. Then we're going to be going through just the position, the player profile. So who do we have out here and just kind of break that down. Then over-unders, comparing what did we do last year to what we think we could be doing this year. And the final, the big piece, did we get better at this position? So let's first kind of break this down with some of the losses. I don't really hate any of these losses that we had. We lost Danny Trevathan, Alec Ogletree, and Joel Iyiegbuniwe. It's probably the last time that I have to say that name, unfortunately. But Danny Trevathan and Alec Ogletree, I don't mind letting them walk. Ogletree was just kind of a fill-in, just kind of a backup. And Danny Trevathan, we all know this. We saw the wheels fall off maybe 2 years ago. And it's unfortunate because he was always a good leader, and I thought that he was kind of underappreciated with the Bears. And then he gets banged up, and now he's not the same. So it's kind of good that, hey, you're gone, Ogletree's gone, and now we can kind of bring in some new people and really kind of build around Roquan Smith. So now what the team actually looks like is we shifted over to our 4-3 defense. So Nicholas Morrow is currently the starter at the weak side linebacker position. Roquan Smith is currently at the middle linebacker position, and Matt Adams is at that Sam linebacker, so that other third linebacker, which really, I just want to get this out of the way, isn't really a starting position anymore because majority of the time you're playing a nickel coverage. So more so just 2 linebackers out there rather than having the actual base defense. Nobody really plays base defense, but still Matt Adams will be out there, or whoever is that Sam linebacker, a little bit more than what we did. It's still up in the air, though, on who's going to be that weak side linebacker. So Roquan Smith might be the weak side linebacker, or Morrow might be as well. We just have to see what they're doing with training camp. It sounds like they're really kind of flip-flopping all the time, so we don't necessarily know. I think Roquan's going to be it, but it's all just up in the air. So let's get started with the first player. We're going to be breaking down these starters. So the first player has got to be everybody's favorite, Mr. Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith had an insane season, but still got no love. No Pro Bowl for the man after 163 freaking tackles, 1 interception, 12 tackle for losses, 3 sacks. Absolutely incredible production. And we know how good of a leader he is out there for this team, but still no public love. He is one of the fastest linebackers. You're already hearing Braxton Jones say, yeah, when you play with somebody like Roquan Smith, you realize the speed. Because, yeah, he looks like thick, but you see just the natural speed he has at that linebacker position. Absolutely incredible. Is able to run down running backs, is able to do whatever you ask of him. A very good cover guy. So obviously, I could just be gushing about him all day. This could be an hour of just gushing over Roquan Smith, an absolute phenomenal player. But what are some of the storylines going into this season? So the big question for me is, will he finally get the respect that he deserves? no Pro Bowls. and with this, I'm curious to see, can he get more of those big splash plays? And because you see like a Devin White and players like that aren't as good as Roquan Smith, but they have a bunch of splash plays. So people are like, oh man, this guy must be good. Roquan Smith, I think, just needs to kind of blow up more people in the backfield. Hopefully the defensive line in kind of this 4-3 can kind of take on some of the blockers, get him more free, because the guy can wrap up. Roquan Smith can make tackles. It seems like half of the team was missing tackles out there, but Roquan was the person cleaning up everybody else's mess. And this is his, 5th year with the team? 25 years old. So still super, super young at the position, but he's going into the contract year. That's the big key piece. It sounds like they were expecting him to be signed over this summer. So maybe when this gets released, maybe when you're listening to this, hopefully he's signed. But I would be shocked if the Bears didn't sign him, because he is a leader out there. He's one of the best young linebackers in the league, and linebackers don't grow on trees. It's one of the most difficult positions to play on the defense nowadays, with the size and the speed of running backs and tight ends. You need a player like this to be the middle of your defense. And I want to just kind of call out these trade rumors, quote unquote, about Roquan Smith, because whenever I look into a headline that says trade rumors, Roquan Smith, and then you read it and all it is it's just a headline that somebody wanted to get some clicks. And the Roquan Smith headline is really more of, well, if he doesn't get a contract, would he be traded? That's really what all the quote unquote rumors are. To me, everything that I've heard is not about him leaving the Bears. It's more of, well, what if he didn't sign? So to me, I think he's going to sign. But obviously, if he's not going to re-sign, then yeah, that's where then you start to go into that what if. What if we trade him? What if this? But obviously, re-sign the man. He's good. He's really freaking good. Just give him his contract, give him his money, have him be the face, have him be the next face of the franchise at the middle linebacker position. But yeah, very, very disrespected. We got to see what position he's going to be playing. But this is something that I want to just look out for, because how can he get more respect besides just making bigger plays? To me, where I think that he could get a lot more respect is he just needs to shed a little bit of blockers, a little bit better. I think that's one of my biggest critiques is sometimes when he gets blocked, he doesn't necessarily shed it as well as some of the other top of the line linebackers. So I think if he can show a little bit more dominance in the run game, not just being like open and making the tackle, but shed a block. And if you're running Roquan Smith's side, he can get off the block and make an arm tackle, something like that. That's something that I want to see out of him a little bit more, that I think he'll start to get more respect from people like PFF and other sort of analytical people that say, hey, he's not great at stuffing the run, because he's a great tackler. He's great in coverage. So I just want to see a little bit more of that to hopefully take him to that next level. So hopefully he can finally get some of the respect that he so desperately deserves, because man, I could watch Roquan Smith highlights all day. It's so crazy to see the speed, just the natural speed he's got, man. It's absolutely crazy. So let's go over to the other linebacker. And I honestly have to say I'm semi-critical of this signing. Not saying that it's a terrible signing or a bad signing. I just want the Bears to be amazing at linebacker. But that's where let's go into Nicholas Morrow. So Nicholas Morrow, a fairly good linebacker. He was with the Las Vegas Raiders, and he was injured last season with a broken ankle, I believe, and in 2020 started only 11 games. And in those 11 games, 78 tackles, 9 passes defended. Very good. 1 interception and 8 tackle for losses. Honestly, a pretty good stat line for only 11 games. And the more that I watched him, the more that I started liking him. He's definitely a smaller linebacker. And we already have a small linebacker, quote unquote, small linebacker in Roquan Smith. I remember that was the big critique of him coming out. Is he too small at linebacker? But in reality, he's just the size of every linebacker that's been coming out. But Nicholas Morrow is fast. He's very quick. This is what we want inside of this defense. A little bit more speed rather than Danny Trevathan kind of lumbering behind a wide receiver as he's crossing the middle of the field. But really, Nicholas Morrow, I'm starting to warm up to him a little bit more. The more that I watch, the more that I read. And this is the big thing. It's the potential for the upside on this player. Because last year I heard some people that cover the Raiders, they were calling him the best linebacker on the Raiders. And they had Kwiatkowski, and yeah, they don't have a lot of great linebackers, but still, he was seen by the media as their best linebacker, as the guy in the middle. And now he's on our team, so he's recovering from an injury. So naturally, my biggest question was, is he healthy? And last year in 2021, he was actually going to be coming back in the playoffs, but ultimately they said, no, just shut it down. We'll just stick with this roster and you can come back next year. Now he signed with the Bears and he's obviously on our team. So it gave me a little bit more comfort knowing that it shouldn't be this nagging injury because he suffered it so early last year. So that's why there really hasn't been much talk of his injury at all, because it should, and it looks like it is fully healed. But I will call this out. He is more of that nickel linebacker. And a good stat is he's 216 pounds, 6 foot, 216. That's 16 pounds heavier than Kyler Gordon. Now, I know that the weights sometimes can really, really fluctuate and they don't update it since the combine. But still, it just kind of shows he's very light. So the big question is, can he stop the run? Because you know he's going to be good with coverage. In PFF charted him at a 70.4 coverage grade, which is good for a linebacker that's out there. So the big question is, can he stuff the run? You already have, like I mentioned, Roquan Smith wasn't known for being the largest linebacker in the world. Nicholas Morrow is definitely not known as the largest linebacker in the room. So to me, that's the big question. The run. Can we stuff it with some smaller linebackers out there? I know that I like to win with speed, but it's just a big storyline going into this season. But overall, Nicholas Morrow, a pretty good cover guy. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence this year, is you have two good coverage people. Now, the big question is, can we stuff the run with these two? Most likely, they're going to be playing majority of the snaps on this defense at that linebacker position. So the run is the only thing that I kind of question. And that's where, if Roquan Smith can kind of take that next step with shedding the blocks and making his own run stuffs, I think that this defense would be good, because now you have Nicholas Morrow being able to cover one. Last year, you could just throw it at Alec Ogletree or Danny Trevathan all day, and you knew you would easily get some yards and they could just easily pick us apart. But let's go back to the starting lineup. So we went through the main two, Roquan Smith, Nicholas Morrow, but who the heck is Matt Adams? Who is Matt Adams? And unfortunately, you've probably heard his name. He's another smaller, 6 foot, 230, so at least a little bit beefier than everyone else. But you might have heard of him because he had multiple weapons charges against him recently. Now, at the time of this recording, I haven't heard much else kind of come out about this, but obviously it's not a good look. We already had the Byron Pringle situation, which Byron Pringle, dismissed. And it's like, hey, I knew that was dumb. Whatever, let's move on. And Matt Adams, this is definitely a lot more serious. But what it looks like is all the weapons. TMZ reported this, that all the weapons that he had were registered in his name, but because he was in Illinois has like another process that he has to go through. He didn't go through that, and that's why he's in trouble. So I don't think it's a fireable offense for him, but I'm not the one that makes that decision. But also, I'm curious too, is he actually going to be the starter? Was he signed to be that guy? Because it seems like as soon as he was signed, the Bears were like, all right, cool, we're set at linebacker. They didn't draft anybody. We'll talk about the undrafted people, but they didn't draft anyone. They really only signed Joe Thomas and Noah Dawkins, which we'll go through as well. They weren't really, there was no sense of urgency, it seemed, at this position. So that's why a lot of people are saying, hey, he's the starter. He's going to be the starter. In 2018, had a 73.8 run grade. Now, remember, this linebacker position that he would be playing is all about stuffing the run. So here's this guy that can stuff the run. He showed it in 2018, but in 2020, in 2021, didn't really play. 0 defensive snaps in 2020, 2 in 2021. So it's a bold move if they're signing him as the defensive starter, especially since the people that ran the Colts are now running our defense. So maybe they saw something out of him and they're like, hey, were you benched just because Okereke and Darius Leonard, and they have a lot of really good linebackers. So, hey, we have all these mouths that we have to feed. Sorry you don't get a starting job, but come over to Chicago. Now you can be that guy. It could be what the Bears were trying to do, but it's a little bit scary knowing that your potential starter, yes, in a 4-3 in your base defense, not nickel, it's still only playing 2 snaps last year. Little bit nervous, makes you a little bit uneasy, but that's why I'm curious, can any of these backups compete for that job, or is it pretty much just his job to keep and his job to win? So let's go back to the depth chart then. So not a lot to say with Matt Adams, unfortunately, because there's just not a lot on him. Special teamer, can play the run a little bit, played a little bit more in 2018, but still he looks like he's going to be the starter in that Sam linebacker position. But let's go to the backups, because the second strings, it's a little interesting because we signed Joe Thomas, the 31-year-old veteran. We signed Noah Dawkins, who I believe it's his 3rd year in the league, and also Caleb Johnson's coming back. The beast from the Baptist, Houston Baptist, Caleb Johnson is coming back as well. So I don't necessarily have too many highlights or stats or anything like that on these guys, but Joe Thomas used to play for the Packers. That's where the name might be a little bit more familiar, and he's not the offensive lineman from the Cleveland Browns, but still, Joe Thomas has been a solid linebacker, plays a little bit more of that Sam linebacker position. So that's where he could kind of compete a little bit, was pretty good at defending the run. And that's where I think he could compete with Matt Adams. Maybe that spot is up in the air, but Joe Thomas just adding a little bit more veteran leadership and a decent special teamer. But let's go to Noah Dawkins and Caleb Johnson. I think right off the bat, they're special teamers. Noah Dawkins has been a special teamer. He's 6'1", 215 out of Citadel, and was known as this crazy athlete. The thing that I'm curious about is his upside. In the preseason, he had a 90 PFF coverage grade, which is elite. Yet again, I think it was only like 19 snaps, so very, very small sample size, but still somebody that you want to at least bring in and see what he's got. Like we said, good athlete. Yet again, a fairly light player at 215 at 6'1", but still somebody that you can at least kind of see what does he have. And same thing with Caleb Johnson, 6'2", a lot bigger than these other linebackers, but we already saw last year was automatically just going up crazy on the depth chart and was eventually a special teams player. And that's why I think that ultimately Caleb Johnson will probably stay on this team. But I'm just curious, is he actually going to be starting? Can he at least start? Can he at least get some more playing time and at least kind of fight in some of those positions? Because yet again, I'm not sold on Adams being that linebacker. But now let's get into the interesting part, I guess you could say, the 3rd string linebackers. The 3rd string linebackers are all undrafted rookie free agents. So you have CJ Avery, 6 foot, 230 out of Louisville, Christian Albright, 6'2", 239 out of Ball State, and Jack Sanborn out of Wisconsin. Now, before we get into Sanborn, I just want to mention that Avery and Albright, all I think that they're going to be doing is just trying to compete for practice squad playing time. They're going to be competing for that. So I don't know too much on them. I'll be looking out for them during training camp to see if they are going to be something. Are they turning some heads? But so far, not really turning any heads. But obviously when you get the pads on, you can see a little bit more of the tackling and form to see, are they actually good and can they actually compete for that practice squad spot? But let's go to one of my favorite players, and that's Jack Sanborn. This guy, undrafted rookie free agent out of Wisconsin. I live in Wisconsin. A lot of my family went to Wisconsin, so I've watched him, and he's a beast. 89 tackles last year, 88.8 PFF grade, borderline elite, 5 sacks, and 16 tackle for losses. Absolutely crazy production for this linebacker. Why was he undrafted? I can tell you. So he's undrafted. He's 6'2", 234. And the best way to put this, he is your stereotypical Wisconsin linebacker. Smart, aggressive, high motor, but unathletic and short, stubby arms. So because of that, he fell off a lot of people's draft boards. And a lot of people were saying, listen, he's got the talent. He's got the mind for it. I think about, I believe it's TJ Edwards who plays for the Eagles. And he's been a solid linebacker for them, and same mold as a Jack Sanborn, where, hey, short, stubby arms, not very athletic, but very smart with a very high motor. And that's why a lot of people say he should easily be a special teamer. He's got the motor, he's got the drive. You can just kind of say, definitely you're going to be a special teamer. But also, it's going to be interesting because he's known as a good run stuffer, not a great cover guy, can really kind of attack. The Wisconsin defense is all about attacking the line of scrimmage, attacking the run, attacking the running back. And that's where, as a Sam linebacker, that's what you're hoping your player does. And that's why I think Sanborn, honestly, he could be a day one starter just because of the lack of competition at that Sam linebacker spot. Maybe it's something that Adams was promised the role. I don't know. But I think that Sanborn could definitely compete because you look at those stats, man. 89 tackles, 5 sacks. Yes, it's college, but this is Big Ten. Big Ten is a decent, it's not the SEC, but still very good football. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're probably a Illinois fan, Northwestern fan, or something like that at least. But I think that he could be a great linebacker for this team. The only thing that gets me a little bit nervous is he has a 17.1% career missed tackle rate. That's not great. That's my only concern because I look at linebackers like Nicholas Morrow and Roquan Smith. Their NFL missed tackle percentage is like 7%, not 17% like Jack Sanborn. That's, to me, the biggest concern. Not about his athleticism, because if he's just playing in that Sam linebacker, you're just attacking the run. You're just attacking the running back, which he's shown he can do. But I want this guy to be vice grips. I want this guy to lock down that side. I want him to be able to take that guy down. And that's the only concern. He's aggressive. He's fiery, but you got to wrap up. You got to make sure you make the tackle. But he's somebody definitely to watch out for. We might have to be watching him in the preseason games to see how he does. But still, I think that he could compete, could definitely be on this team. And as an undrafted rookie free agent, I'm all up for that. But let me know if you're watching on YouTube down in the comments. Do you like him? Have you seen some of the tape? What do you think about Jack Sanborn? But guys, that's the depth chart. That's the team right there from the linebacker position. So let's go over to this over-unders. So the first stat is all about the linebackers. Last year, our linebackers only had 2 interceptions. I'm talking about inside linebackers, not our edges. So our inside linebackers only had 2 interceptions. So do I think over or under? I think that this is an easy over. You have a Nicholas Morrow out there who, like we've seen, he's got his hands on 9 balls in 11 starts in 2020. I think that with the aggressive mentality, I think he turns those over into actual interceptions. So to me, I think maybe we get 3 or 4 interceptions as a unit as the inside linebackers. But the next stats, these are all team holes, like the complete team. We allowed 14 rushing touchdowns last year. And guys, honestly, I think that this is going to be higher. I'm taking the over, unfortunately. I think we're going to allow more rushing touchdowns not because of this linebacking group, but mainly because of the interior. We don't have a lot of beef. We really don't. And hopefully Tonga can take a step forward, but I think in the middle we are lacking because we've talked about the light linebackers, the light and fast linebackers. If I'm a team and if I'm in the red zone, I'm going to pound you guys right up the middle. And we're going to try and get 1-2 yards so that we can get that touchdown. And that's why I think it's going to be a little bit higher, because I think you can run on the interior of this once you get into the red zone a little bit easier than last year without Nichols, without Goldman, without Akeem Hicks. But then also now the next one, missed tackles. Last year we had 106 missed tackles, which honestly wasn't terrible compared to everyone else. This also isn't about linebackers. This is the entire Chicago Bears team. And this is going to be under. This is definitely going to be under. The Indianapolis Colts had a very low missed tackle number. And I think the Bears are going to be the same way with trying to enforce that hits principle and say, hey, if you're missing tackles, we're going to be calling you out on this. So to me, I think that that's going to be an easy under as with Roquan Smith, and hopefully Nicholas Morrow can help out with that number, keeping it low. And I think too, with our corners as well, I think that that number is definitely going to be a lot lower. And last but not least, rushing yards, 2,127. Now, that's over 100 yards a game. Because if you think about it, 17 games, that's over 100 yards. And even though that I think that people are going to be able to run on this team, I would much rather run on this team than pass against this team, because we've talked about the safeties. We've talked about the defensive backs. I would rather run because you have two good pass coverage linebackers now in Nicholas Morrow and Roquan Smith. I'm going to be running on these guys. And even though that, I'm going to take the under. I'm leaning towards push. Like, just say, hey, it's going to be the same. It's going to be within 50 yards of that. I think it's going to be this similar, but I'm hoping that it should be a little bit less because we are wrapping up and making these tackles, because it felt like there's a lot of plays that just kind of busted open on this defense. So I hope that because we're tackling better, that overall we're keeping the rushing yards a little bit lower. But if you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree with this linebacker group? But guys, this is going to be the last better or worse for the defense. And guys, since you're listening, I think that this is better. I think that Roquan Smith is going to take just natural progression. I think natural progression, he's going to be better. Statistically, it might not be the same, but I think he's going to keep advancing as a leader, as a better player on this defense. And even though I've been critical of Nicholas Morrow, I think that he's an upgrade over Danny Trevathan and over Alec Ogletree. Because if he can't stuff the run, because that's been the big concern, is maybe he's not the best run stuffer. If he can cover the pass, that's tremendous help, tremendous upgrade over what we had last year. So I'm really just grading these two linebackers, and to me, that's where I feel this is going to be an upgrade. I have concerns about this depth, though, because Joe Thomas has not shown anything crazy. Noah Dawkins, same thing. It's this lots of young linebackers that they must be trying to develop into something great. But overall, it's a plus for me at this linebacker position. So guys, wrapping this thing up. If you haven't listened to the other ones, you can leave this right now and you can go listen to them. But I came into this going, okay, I think that this defense is going to be okay. But I'm looking at this, we got better at the linebacker position. We got better at the safety position, cornerback position. The only positions that I downgraded was the defensive tackles and the defensive ends. Now, let me know what you guys think below, because right now I'm feeling optimistic. I want to see this defense. We got a lot of young people going into a quote unquote easier system than before. So hopefully those young bucks can learn this system. And I think that we're going to be a lot better from the pass coverage perspective. It's about that line. We'll still have to see what's going on with Robert Quinn, but still, it's an exciting time to be a Bears fan. Lots of potential, lots of reason for optimism, at least on this defense. But like I said, let me know. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching out on YouTube. Make sure to rate 5 stars. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks to all those people on Spotify that gave out some 5 stars. I saw that. Thank you so much. And Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.